I'm playing Yuck Yucks in Niagara Falls Valentine's Day. This is my friend Joe Warmington. I'm just telling him. I don't want anybody else to hear it. I'm playing Yuck Yucks Valentine's Day in Niagara Falls.
Do you get the romantic suite at that one over the falls?
I would imagine I'll get a diseased heart-shaped bed.
Yeah,
that's what Niagara Falls is, diseased heart-shaped bed. You don't get the good one.
The romance that you're describing is just fantastic. And that's going to bring a lot of people there.
What you're going to have there, girls, is any guy who brings you to Niagara Falls for Valentine's Day, you pretty much know where the cheap bastard's going to take you on your honeymoon.
Do you bring quarters into the room, or is it a credit card now?
I think it's credit card.
Can you get one of those e-cards?
That's right.
Yeah.
With Joe Warmington, I've known him for, how long have I known you? Over 20 years?
Well, I first met you when you were doing your TV show. I mean, I saw you other times because I've been around a long time. And
when you were the Scrawler.
Yeah, that's when I really focused, and I really wanted to, get you in the column. And you knew that I was doing the column, and I remember you telling your staff, if this guy starts coming around here, don't beat him up. And I was the only media.
I always liked it.
I was the only media in the city when that was the hottest show. They could walk right in and watch the show, and then you would, on the way, to your dressing room, would give me a couple of quotes or a couple of jokes, and it was very exciting. And I was there maybe 6 or 7 times to see you.
I think you were there more than that.
Yeah, maybe a dozen times, and I know that and I'd heard of you before that because I know some people that So I would say at least 20 years. I've been at the Sun since '91. So.
Yeah, you started as a Scrawler. You used to go out at night all over the city.
I did, and it was the most fun that I ever had in this business.
Like the biggest difference between you and a loiterer was paycheck.
Paycheck,
because you were all over the place.
Yeah, and the thing about it was, by the end of it, I mean, I was a homeless guy. I was like, I didn't even know anymore what. Yeah. I was a night guy, and I really wasn't naturally that, which I don't think a real natural night kind of person would have. I would have been a little cooler if I'd been. Right. That, but I wouldn't have been able to get the story.
Actually, you were more like a hooker.
Well, exactly.
A hooker with a pen and a pad. Yeah, that's what you were like, because you were in all those areas where people shouldn't be at night.
And it was the thing about it that was fascinating was that I was very, very good about discretion, because I used to see different people
in places where they shouldn't have been.
And if they told you I'm not here, I usually honored that unless they were real jerks, in which case I wouldn't. But it was. I mean, I could tell you some funny stories about that if you want to hear one.
I want to hear one.
Want to hear one now? Well, my favorite one was just trying to think of her name. She's such a great actress, Neve Campbell.
Yeah,
Neve Campbell was down in Yorkville. That one little alley that goes through kind of.
Was this before her nude scene in Wild Things or after her nude scene in Wild Things?
I'm not sure, but. She was really a big deal at the time, and very, very beautiful, and a great actress and all of that stuff. And I had never met her before.
Right.
But I used to sort of scroll around, as I used to call it. You might call it stalking, because I did it to you as well.
Yeah.
And so I would kind of walk around. Those days, Yorkville was the place. Now it's not as much. It's in a different way. But if you walked around Yorkville for 3 or 4 hours and you did the thing there, you would run into things. And of course, I was never paparazzi. I didn't see myself that way. I always talked to the celebrity, got their permission to take their picture most of the time. I mean, there was exceptions if it was film festival or something, you just snap away.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have an interaction. I wanted to write something of some substance, not just snap them.
Right.
So Neve Campbell and Jeremy Irons in that alleyway. Coming, and it was a really cold night in the middle of winter, and I wasn't expecting to see that. Now, see, this is the other thing. This used to drive them nuts on Sun News. I would always have my phone on, and when Rob Ford, that whole story, he would phone me in the middle of the show, and I would put it on speaker, things like that. I don't think I'm going to take that. Looks like maybe I won some lottery or something.
Okay, Joe, let's...
so you want to the rest of the story? So
let's try and contain your ADD. Yeah. We were talking about Neve Campbell and Jeremy Irons. So walking down the most expensive alley in Canada, in Yorkville.
Right there. No one's there, just me and them. I have my camera. And so I stopped.
Yorkville was the kind of place where somebody broke into your car and put in a better stereo.
Oh, yeah. It
was not a place where you got robbed.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is if you go back to Dinkles and those kind of places, there were lots of interesting things happening back in the day. But anyway, so Nev's there. And she was not happy because, she was just I think she was engaged or had a boyfriend at the time, and she wasn't doing anything with Jeremy Irons, but she could envision the tabloids putting a picture of them there. I think they were working on a movie together. Anyway, he was loving it. I'll do a picture with her. I don't care. And she didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so I said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll get a picture of you, Jeremy, here, and I snapped one of her separately, and I put them on opposite sides of the page in the paper, and I never mentioned they were together. And everything went on. And about 8 months later at the film festival, and I never got invited to the parties. I used to go to the parties as the Scrawler, and they would never let me in any of the events. The film festival was real snobby about it. And often I was the only one that was actually covering the event. I mean, that was the irony of it. All the cool people are in there, and I'm on the outside, but I liked being on the outside.
Yeah.
So I remember somebody comes up from the film festival, which never happened, and said, look, at somebody inside this party, and I saw the celebrities going in, they want you to come in. Brian Adams was in there and all this stuff. And I go, it's okay, I'm comfortable here. I'm just going to get people coming and going. I don't want to go in the party. They said, no, they really want you to come in. So I go into the party, and there's Neve Campbell. And I thought, I didn't know, and she's like, I just want to say something to you. And I said, you okay? And she said, I want to apologize. And she said, I was a real jerk to you. You were doing your job.
Yeah, women don't say jerk, Joe, so let's...
Yeah, she said something like that. And she said, look, hang around, have something. And she introduced me to her brother and her parents and her agent. And she was the nicest. And even that night, I understood her point of view. But I thought that, I think the paparazzi could do more of that, more humanizing of people. And I think the stars could do more of it too, where you've been on that side of it, on the celebrity side, where, you kind of, like with me, you never ever were irritated, but I always asked you. And I remember a couple of times.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, Jerry Seinfeld was the smartest one. He would walk up to the paparazzi instead of waiting for the paparazzi to walk up to him.
Yeah.
And one of them got a traffic ticket one night in New York, and he gave him the money to pay for it. He took the traffic ticket off the car and said he was going to pay it.
And he paid it.
Probably. I don't know. There was never a follow-up to it, but I'll tell you, he was smart because he made himself completely 100% accessible. Therefore, they didn't want to hound him all the time. They didn't want to be on his tail.
He's the smartest guy. One time at the King Edward Hotel, my friend and I we went to sit at a table, and it said reserved. And so they said, no. And then my friends at the King Eddie said, that's Jerry Seinfeld. He's doing a show over at Massey Hall. Yeah. He's coming after with his friend, and they're going to have a cigar. In those days, you were allowed to do that. Now you can just smoke dope, I guess, outside. Yeah. That's all you smell here by the end of the studio is just dope. I don't know if that was you guys or what that was, but anyway, save me some for no, I mean, I don't, it's horrible. It's legal, isn't it? I think
it's legal.
Yeah, it's legal. So we're okay. So anyway, he's there.
What do you want me to say? We taped this in 1990? Is that what you want me to tell you?
So anyway, Seinfeld's there. This was for Seinfeld. But 15 times we went to the table, and they came over and kicked him out. This is for Jerry, whatever. Finally, these two guys show up. And my friend and I were supposed to stay for one cigar, one drink, and go. But there was no way. We wanted to see Seinfeld. So we waited and got talking about everything, and we waited and waited. Finally, two guys show up, and sure enough, over comes the waiter and the manager to kick him out, and it's Seinfeld and his manager, or whoever it was.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whoa, that really is Seinfeld, right? Really? He looked over at us and he goes, I'm buying you guys the drink, because we saved a seat, and he thought that was cool. And he was like, he kind of connects with people like they're human, and I really appreciate that.
Most comics are like that, though. It's the smartest way to be.
Yeah,
it's always a tough go coming up, and when you get there, you appreciate it, and you appreciate the attention from people. So comics are kind of born to it.
I remember one time being over in your show. I think it was like a rehearsal or something. It was Warren Z. Vaughn.
Yeah, I love that guy.
And
okay, I got to tell you a funny story about him. I'm not going to say who it was, but he was on my show, and he'd been on another show in the afternoon, another talk show. So he invited my band leader, Orrin, and I to come see him at the Horseshoe that night. He had a great time on our show. So we get there, and he's on stage, and after I walked in, he noticed me. He goes, oh, man, I did so-and-so's show this afternoon. She's a real C word, and he used the whole thing. And then he goes, but I did Mike Bullard's show tonight, and he should be on your money. Which was the biggest thrill I ever had, from that guy. He was just unbelievable. It was an amazing night seeing him, too.
Oh, yeah. What was the show like?
It was amazing. It was packed. It was just packed.
Well, I want to tell a story that's not quite as good. When the time you went into the Meatloaf concert and you were late.
Oh, yeah. Meatloaf, yeah.
That was great. I was there. And
he was Meatloaf Unplugged.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not a good idea. Meatloaf Unplugged is not a good idea. I didn't know if they meant life support or amplifier when I saw him.
Everybody in Massey Hall was complaining, and they were telling him to shut up and saying he was talking. But I loved it because it was something real.
Yeah.
And he was, he was swearing, and he was honest, and he was a very interesting guy. The stuff that I've read about him recently being a jerk and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not fair.
No, he was nice to me. Yeah. We had him on twice.
And and even with guys like me that would, street urchins that would go up, never, ever, ever a jerk with me.
Well, he knew who his audience was.
And but
anyway, when I walked in late, he goes, "Why are you late?"
He stopped the show.
The
whole show was sold out.
I was taping my show, which he'd just been on, so he had to know what time I was going to get there. And then I show up, and I was embarrassed as hell because he stops the show and goes, "Why are you late?" And
right in the middle of "Bad Out of Hell," he stopped.
Yeah, "Bad Out of Hell,"
stopped.
which is everybody's favorite Meatloaf song. Yeah. So you're sitting there feeling like the biggest asshole on the face of the earth, going, "Man, if somebody interrupted "Bad Out of Hell" to walk in late, I'd think the guy was the biggest jerk off on the face of the earth." And I'm sitting there feeling like
it was a tough crowd that night.
Yeah,
it was a tough crowd.
They didn't like the unplugged part. Yeah. And he goes, "Why are you late?" I said, "I was outside trying to scalp my ticket." And then he got pissed off. He didn't take it as a joke.
It was good times.
Yeah, we always had good times there.
I thought you're here to talk about me, but we're talking about you. Let's talk about you, Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Let's talk about you. You've been at the Toronto Sun, which we get a lot of listeners in the U.S., so I should explain it. I would have to say the Toronto Sun's a right-wing paper.
Can I tell the
Would you say right?
Can I tell the listeners in the Sun the time that I came in to do the story about your radio show, and there was you and two other comedians, and I did it on a Thursday, and it was going to run in the Sunday paper, and no one let me know that you were canceled on the Friday. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, it was serious.
So the story ran.
We're going to cut this part out, Joe. So if you want to ramble on, go ahead. Any sentence with the word "canceled," we edit it out.
Yeah, it's a very conservative paper, and it's the number one.
Toronto Sun is the conservative paper.
1971. The people, and you knew some of these people like Peter Worthington and Bob McDonald and Doug Creighton, and obviously Andy Donato's the last day oneer that's still there. They left the Telegram, which folded, and then they started, I think that happened on the Saturday, and on the Monday, the Toronto Sun. They said it would last 6 months. And here we are, we're getting close to 50 years. And it's always been right of center, which it needs here in Canada. It's based a little bit on the British tabloids. But
I have to say, you know what?
But it's not British tabloids.
But it is probably the only right of center paper.
Well, I think
with any import anyway. Like you got the Toronto Star, which is so far left it should fall over, and you got the Globe and Mail.
Yeah, which is.
And then you got the Sun and the Post, National Post, are the two opposing voices, I guess.
And I think the National Post and the Sun have more. They're not monolithic. They have all kinds the Toronto Sun. There's lots of liberals right in there, but I think the overall theme is to kind of stand up to some of the lunacy of the left, which is what you talked about. I mean. You need to. You know what?
I'm not going to disagree with you on that because I've been. What I don't get is people who are all one way all the time. I'm not liberal on everything. I'm not conservative on everything. I'm not. I'm not commie on everything. I'm just some things I think conservatively on. Some things I think a little left on, and other things fall somewhere in the middle. And I don't understand people who aren't like that. I don't understand people who say, well, I'm a Republican because my father was a Republican and my grandfather was a Republican. My brother told me, he lives in L.A., and he told me that the first thing that happens when you go to a party anywhere in the U.S. is somebody asks you whether you're Republican or Democrat. And I can't recall ever being asked that question when I walked into a party somewhere in Canada.
I think it's really sad, and it's come here as well, and I've sort of been at the epicenter.
It's here now.
Yeah, I've been at the epicenter of it. I mean, I get it every day. Just today, I tweeted out pictures at the airport of people coming off the plane from China.
Yeah. With the corona, you were doing a story on the coronavirus.
Coronavirus, which I've written a column.
Why the hell is it called the coronavirus? That's a Mexican beer. I don't get it.
We could make jokes about it. I guess we shouldn't because there's people that have died from it. But Yeah, so you tweet out pictures of people coming off with the masks, and they're coming from China, so many people of Asian descent coming off, and people right away they're sending it to Twitter. This is racist. You're being racist. You're a white supremacist. You're this.
You were getting that today?
Well, yeah, I was getting that. I get that every day. And what that is,
so many other reasons to call you that. I don't understand.
There you go. Yeah.
All you were doing.
I didn't know it was Mike that was behind that.
By the way, how
getting paid?
How valued are you by the Toronto Sun that you're the first guy they sent out there?
Yeah, I think that.
You know what I mean? Some people will go, "Hey, this is a really big story. I can't believe they picked me to do it." No, they want me to die. That would be my thing. I go, "No, they want me to die."
Jack Boland and I were discussing that, and
he's another reporter at the Sun.
He's the photographer.
Oh, okay.
And we went out there and we made that joke too. That it doesn't matter. I don't think they like us. But on the other hand, it's the biggest story in the world, and we're on it. And
was anybody coughing or spitting up or anything?
It was fine. Everybody was good. But there was people that didn't eat on the flight 14 hours. They didn't want to take the mask off.
Yeah.
I feel for the airport workers. I mean, I really do. They're the porters and all the people that in the change,
right.
They've got their masks on, and I feel really sorry for them.
Well, you know what? If anybody's going to catch something, it's going to be those guys. But you know what? I got a friend who's a doctor, and I'll tell you, the guy's bulletproof. He's been exposed to so much shit that he never gets sick.
I've met the guy.
Yeah, Jack.
Yeah.
He's been exposed to so much shit that he never gets sick.
Yeah, he's been around you, and he hung in there.
When I was a kid, maybe people died of peanut allergies. I don't know. But one day a kid just didn't come to school and nobody talked about it. You know what I mean? I don't know if it was a peanut allergy, whatever it was. Nobody offered counseling. We just knew the kid was gone. And now today, my mother always swore that Lysol wipes were what gave people all these allergies.
I agree with your mom. I think that...
Yeah, like your aunt with the mustache spitting in a hanky and wiping your face might have done you a favor.
I absolutely believe that. And I think, as a father...
Except for those dark sexual thoughts I get from it.
Well, you know what? You got to... in this day and age, that sounds a little bit safer than some of the stuff that's going on because... it is a nasty world out there. I mean, it really is. There's some really this internet and all of the things that go with it.
Yeah,
there's some pretty scary stuff on there. You have to really watch it.
Yeah. Now, do you think are they thinking that this pandemic is going to explode here, like SARS did?
I think
like SARS did or didn't. By the way, because I was doing a show every night in front of a live audience, and I never saw any indications of SARS whatsoever, and that was at the height of it.
I didn't see a lot of SARS either. I covered a lot of it, and there were obviously there were SARS cases, but it wasn't. I think this thing is going to be like that. Yeah, I do, because they're at 19 now. I know of some other places where there's ambulances and things like that. That people are wearing the hazmat suit. So I think that in the next few days you're going to see this up to about 100 here.
It's got to be an incubation period though, before it starts to show up.
Between 4 and 10 days, they say. So yeah, it's coming here. I think so. And if you look in China, the way it goes, I feel so bad for the people there because they're blowing up the roads and they're chasing people away with swords and things like that. So obviously they know it's bad.
How many people are there? Billion?
I think there's 1.3 billion there.
Yeah, 1.3
billion.
But
in the town of Wuhan, the city, it's up around 12 million. So I think it's around that. It's a big place.
That's the city they shut down?
Yeah, they shut down most of it. I think there's still people getting out of there, which is part of the issue. It's hard to do that, a big city like that. They can do a lot more in China because they don't have the freedom of movement and things like that. So, they put you in jail.
It's a lot better when you don't have a constitution and the government gets to do whatever they want. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
No lawyers.
Yeah, let's get back to that right of center thing. Yeah, you're right. It's a lot better when there's no human rights and they can lock down a city and keep you there.
Don't you admire the basic dictatorship of China? Was it you that said that?
Yeah, it was me.
Prime Minister Bullard.
Yeah, I really admire dictatorships. I think that what's going to happen is they're going to get here and there's going to be a lot of cases and they're not going to be able to come up with an antivirus.
No, they'll come up with it.
You think so?
Yeah, they'll come up with it.
Because, they keep talking about this super virus where they're not going to be able to combat it. And when I saw this, I wondered if this was it.
Well, if you think about what happened in 1919 and there's another one 1841 or whatever it was, and through, so sure. I mean, this is only a matter of time before. And especially this jet airliner business. I mean, like today is an example, being out at the airport and you see all these people just coming in.
Yeah.
You know, that would not have happened in 1919. I mean, there might be someone on a boat that would come.
Right.
And so, you know, it travels fast. And
plus, airplanes are incubators anyway. For
every time you go on an airplane, you don't feel well after. So, you know, they pretend that, you know, that they circulate the air differently and some of it goes out, but I don't think so.
No, they've all got that. You know what they have? The blue gel toilet smell. It reeks throughout the entire aircraft. It's always there. The whole aircraft smells like the toilet.
Have you, I imagine you, if someone of your stature and you've been in that sort of that penthouse of entertainment, you've probably gone in that first class kind of.
I flew first class once.
Yeah, I did once too. You know where I was going? I went over to Norway, to that horrible story in Norway with that guy, you know, killed all the kids. There was no other tickets to get there in the world except for on the one through the KLM.
Right.
And so I sat on the upper part of the 747 there and back. That was the ticket. It was like $7,000.
Well, let me tell you about Canadian Celebrity First Class. The only time they ever offer it to you for nothing is Toronto to Windsor, which was about, I think, 34 minutes in first class. I got the unopened peanuts. That's basically what it came down to. I got the unopened peanuts. That's really what I would never spend my own money on first class. When you look at the price difference, it's insane. A friend of mine flew from London to, I think it was Paris. And the price, no, London to New York. And he told me that the price difference on first class was something like $9,000.
Nah, that's where they make their money.
Oh.
Making on wealthy people. And, you know, here we are, you know, the day after the whole Kobe Bryant thing. I mean, where's your helicopter? You ever have a helicopter? The guy takes a helicopter.
Most dangerous, I've never been on one in my life. I'll never get on one. Because to me, it's the most dangerous aircraft on the face of the earth.
I was on helicopters in Afghanistan, including that one, I think, and I was on some of those other ones you see, you know, those war ones.
You know what first class in Afghanistan is? It makes it. That's what first class in Afghanistan is.
Every minute there's a special minute because you don't know what's coming next, that's for sure.
Yeah. And
just went once and it was enough for me.
And Kobe Bryant apparently used this helicopter like a car.
Yeah.
You know, the way most people use a car. And I'll tell you, as soon as I heard it was a helicopter, I just went, wow, man, how many times does this happen? You know?
I was really surprised that he, you know, this is another example, and, you know, God rest his soul and his family and the other people that no one ever mentions. There's 7 other people. Yeah. Altobelli family and the pilot. But, yeah, it just mind-boggling that you have so much money that you can do that. I mean, it could have been a car accident, I guess, but it's really, really too bad. And I think what happened there, I was just listening to a reporter to the U.S., and they were talking about how, and I thought this too, you know, they talk about the instruments.
Yeah.
And the pilot, he was trained on the instruments. Well, apparently, that's like if you showed me how to run this studio here. Right. Just showed me once and I kind of did it. But then you have to do it for real. And of course, it's life or death. And apparently, if you look out the window and try to do window, you know, looking out of the aircraft and on the in the aircraft, that's when the trouble starts. You have to be all in on the instruments. So you may have passed the test, but it's kind of more of an emergency.
I don't want to be in anything that, I remember somebody told me this years ago, where it's 8 hours of maintenance for every hour you're in the air. As soon as I heard that, I'd go, nah, you know what? My car is every 10,000 K for an oil change. Okay, well, we're going to talk about unsolved murders in a couple of minutes, but I want to talk to you about Trump, because I'm not saying the Sun's pro-Trump. By the way, I will give them this. They've printed some negative stories about him. They have. Nope. And they're following the impeachment, and they're giving me what I want. You know what I want? I just want to know the story.
Yeah.
I don't want people's opinions. You know, I know 1 million people who will watch a political pundit, and then they'll go to a party, and they'll plagiarize everything the political pundit is saying just so they come off smart. I don't know if they want to get laid or what, but they do it just so they can come off smart. And I think most Canadians are like me, which is, no, just give me the story. I'll come up with my own opinion. That's where we're different. It's
hard to get.
Yeah, but that's where we're different from our friends to the south, who are either Fox News people or CNN people. And that's the thing with this impeachment, by the way. If you watch CNN, you're getting a whole different story on the impeachment. And if you watch Fox News, you're getting another whole story on the impeachment, which is drastically different.
It's the same when Obama was in the opposite, though. Fox there wasn't one thing Obama did right, and CNN just loved them, and
there was nothing he could do wrong.
And these are business models, CNN and Fox News, and that's what they are. They're business models.
Yeah, so Canadians just want the facts, and I think Americans want opinion, and I think that's one of the biggest differences between us.
Well, they're entrenched in encampments in the U.S., and it's all about.
Yeah, but you know what? We're for the first time ever kind of entrenched here too. I never thought I'd see a time in my life where I disliked Trump and Trudeau equally, which is so conflicting.
Well, you're a people guy. So when people are dying and people are starving and people are, that doesn't sit well with you. And I'm the same as you. I respect these positions, but I don't really care much about the power of them or all that. I care about the people, what happens with them. And so, I was never intimidated or impressed by a politician I met simply by virtue of the fact that they were a politician, that they got elected. Because that's BS. You work for me. And that's the way I've always looked at these people, and that's the way I've always treated them. I'm your boss. You're not mine. And if anybody should be, deferential, it should be you to me, not me to you, depending on your track record. The good ones get that. And I remember even being on your show when Chrétien was there. I was there a couple of times. And again, he was terrific there because, he was really connecting. And
I took a lot of heat for that too, because he was on 2 days after he announced that we weren't going to Iraq. And I remember saying, history will probably show you did the right thing. And when you look back now,
it was the right thing.
It was the right thing to do. We'd be in the hole $2 trillion, just like,
And think of all the dead kids we would have had too,
And
it's bad enough what we did.
Would have decimated our armed forces. It would have decimated them. And that's one good thing. I remember a friendly fire incident in Afghanistan involving our guys.
Yeah.
And nobody even apologized for it under Bush. This is the thing with Trump now. Trump's there. Everybody's attacking Trump. All of a sudden, George W. Bush is an elder statesman.
Yeah. I know,
this guy's getting the biggest free pass I ever saw in my life.
He's loving it. He loves the fact that he can do that.
Yeah, he paints pictures now, and people like Ellen DeGeneres speak fondly of him and to him. And you're going, holy shit, man. 12 years ago, this never would have happened.
In fact, the same apparatus that's, after Trump is the same crowd, only ramped up differently, but it's the same, basically the same thing.
Right. You met Trump, right?
I met him not too far from here when they were, building the tower, and I got a great story about that if you want to hear.
Yeah, he built a tower in Toronto, Yeah, or was licensed to his name anyway.
We didn't know that at the time. I met his kids too. They were here. He was terrific. And the funny story is that they had this tent set up, and I don't.
Did him and Ivanka have the same room?
I didn't check it out. I think that might have been you that was up there skulking around. But we were there, and the media, The Apprentice had just come out, Mike, and it was a big deal, I guess. And I didn't watch it too much, but I know it was really hot at the time. And myself and Dave Thomas, who was the guy that killed your show, your very last guest, we went over to this tent, and all these people were lined up there. Excuse me. And see, there's the coronavirus just showed up.
Right.
All these people were media people I recognize, like Mary Harding, people like that. I guess he hadn't done any interviews since he'd done this Apprentice thing. They were all here in Toronto to talk to him. So I went up to the where they sort of signed you in, and I was my very first time to do something for Sun News or Sun TV, I think it was at that time. So I had a camera guy with me. I think it was Dave Thomas, and they said you can't get in here. You had to RSVP 3 weeks ago and all this kind of stuff. So I was explaining to them I'm from the Toronto Sun and blah blah blah. They didn't care. They didn't want anything to do with it. They were real snobby. They were local people, but they were like one of these local PR companies that were they can't wait to shut you down. So Trump is way across the room, like a long way away. And he comes over and goes, "What's going on?" He saw this, I wasn't fighting. I was just trying to negotiate my way in. So they told him that, we didn't have it ready. He says, okay. He didn't overrule them. He said, look, you guys go into that VIP area over there. Well, we didn't know it was in that tent. It turns out it was a VIP area. And he said, wait over there. And when I get through all this media, then I'll call you in and tag you on the end of it. So I thought, this is terrific. Great. We went over there. There's lobster tails. There's a whole thing. Like, it's really, obviously they're going to have some sort of a party over there later, reception. And Dave Thomas was into they were serving scotch and stuff. And I didn't go anywhere near that because I knew I had to try to interview. It was really fun. And we were in there a long time, like 2.5 hours. That's how long it took to go through that media line. Then Trump leaves. I said to Dave, I think he forgot, but I said it was nice of him anyway to kind of like do this. I think he kind of blew us off. But then he came back. He remembered. Yeah. And he looked and like I didn't have this stuff like the tag with my name and that. He just yelled, "Hey, Joe, you remembered my name? Come on over here."
Right. But at that time, you were still white with blue eyes, right?
Yeah, and he didn't. Nobody tried.
Not a shocker.
But he was terrific. And
no offense, Joe, but you look like a Klansman on Laundry Day, so I'm pretty sure he came over to say hi.
All right. How do I come back to that? See, I'm not a podcaster, so.
But he treated you well.
You know what? He was terrific, and he answered all the questions I mentioned about running for president. I can't find the video clip. I wish that we could find it. If anyone out there knows how to find that, it was on the Sun. Wasn't the Sun News Network, but the Sun TV that was before that. And let us know because we'd love to see that. And anyway, terrific guy. And that's part of one of the reasons that I stick with him when it's easy to pile on him. So I remember dealing with this guy. I dealt with him a few other times too. Yeah. I went to the Buffalo rally. He's always been, if you treat him well and he likes you, you're okay. If you come after him.
Wow, that's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah. Come after him, then I guess you're not okay. But
yeah.
Everybody wants to be liked at some point.
Americans care about the same thing as Canadians when it comes down to an election. Gee, is unemployment way down? Is the stock market up? Am I making money? And I don't care what people say about green energy. I don't care what people say about the Constitution. That's how people vote. Like you see it here too. I mean, all of a sudden the Green Party and the NDP get decimated because people are afraid they're gonna garner a little more power, and suddenly things are gonna change. People hear carbon tax here and they freak out.
Well, I'll give you something about the environmental movement that you hear nonstop, Greta, or whatever that's the latest thing.
I have nightmares. I've had this nightmare twice where she's at the foot of my bed yelling, "How dare you!" It's like I didn't make my bed, and it's only because I didn't make my bed. And I'll tell you, that kid freaks me out. Right or wrong,
like Chucky, like in the horror.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what she's like. Chucky, yeah, she is Chucky to me, and she scares the hell out of me. Well, I'm not saying what she's saying isn't right. It's just the way she says it scares the shit out of me.
It's packaged nicely for her to get her her message out and all that stuff. But she said nothing about the coronavirus. She never says anything about China or India and their pollution, and that's why she.
Yeah, China and India are kind of like fuck you. You had your industrial revolution. We're having ours, so we're going to do whatever we feel like doing. And that's really what it comes down to. Well, I look at that and then I go, well, Jesus, no matter what we do, what kind of positive impact is it going to have?
We're lucky that we, over here in Canada particularly, but the U.S. as well, we're lucky that we have a thing called credit. You take the credit out. Like, I don't know how it works for, nobody that listens to the show, very few people are rich. They're living on credit cards, living on line of credit, living on, your mortgage, all that stuff. You take that out of the game, and that's what those countries are like. They don't own homes. You already hear it. They're talking about here in Canada, they're going to have the government own this percentage of your home and stuff. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's not good. Well, if it does happen, it won't happen because they'll end up owning all of it. And that's where I'm sort of sick of all these communists, whether it's Bernie or whether it's Elizabeth Warren or whether it's your friend Greta. That's what they are. They're socialists.
Did you just slip in the word communist?
Right around the corner from this studio, this was the communist office. Do you know what I'm talking about? On the corner, right by the Horseshoe Tavern. It's still there. It's called the Friends of Russia now, but it was the Friends. And they used to be, that was the most spied on place in Toronto, right there. CSIS and whatever, the RCMP kind of undercover before. Yeah. They would always watch that place. But wire it up.
That's Canada. Like the office had a sign to say Communist Party of Canada. So if you couldn't find it, you had to be a bit of an asshole. And two, CSIS always had marked cars. So you knew when CSIS was there. We have the only secret agents in the world where they advertise in the classifieds for a secret agent. Like in the States, you lie and tell your wife you're an importer, exporter, or you sell shoes. Here, I'm a CSIS.
Secret agent.
I was at a party once, and I asked the guy what he did. He said he was with CSIS. I burst out laughing.
Oh, yeah?
I burst out laughing. I thought, the guy didn't even try. Didn't even try to give me something else.
That's hilarious.
It's funny.
Did they ever try to recruit you?
No.
No, that was Chuck Barris. Sorry.
All right, let's
see
talk.
The way he said no, and then the way he laughed. We know that they tried to recruit him.
Oh, hey, listen, if I had it to do all over again, I'd go for something like that. I'd go for something like CSIS or maybe even the Canadian military. If I had it to do all over again, I'd probably do it.
Military. I
probably.
could see Mike Bullard in the military.
I probably would have done it. You know why? Because I could have used the discipline when I was younger, and it would have been a pretty interesting varied career if you had enough street smarts. Because I'll put street smarts above IQ any day of the week, especially in places like the military and CSIS.
We have a 19-year-old that's going to college, and I said to because my friends are military and that, and we talked over Christmas, and my one friend said to him for the thing that he wants to take, the military will pay for that. Yeah. You get paid, you play basketball on the base. And, you were off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all this stuff. Or you can pay through the nose to go to college and all that stuff. But the discipline part, the kid doesn't want to do that. And
right.
And I never wanted to do it either. My dad was in the military. My uncles, my grandfather was World War II. And I'm like, I admire the hell out of the military people, but I just don't know whether...
When you watch World War II documentaries and stuff, and you see these guys who were 17 years old lying about their age to get in, and then when they're 18, they're flying Spitfires, they're flying American fighters, Canadian fighters. They're 18 years old, they're lieutenants or lieutenants, whatever you want to call them. And you go, man, if World War II broke out today, everybody 18 would be 4F because of diabetes too.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of big gulps and giant Kit Kat and Aero bars. That's it. They'd be done. They wouldn't pass physical.
And it's so true. And, I was thinking about if you ever go over to the Royal Military Institute, I don't know if you've done a show over there. Or
in Kingston, I did it once, yeah.
Well, the one over here on University
Avenue. Oh, okay. I've never done that one.
If you go up there, there's the von Richthofen, his actual seat that was shot down by Roy Brown, who's the Canadian. And it's actually there. It's not in Germany. It's over here on University Avenue.
Right.
A lot of Germans will come and look at it, So I was over there and I did a story on it, and the Australians tried to take credit for shooting down the Red Baron when it was our own Roy Brown from around Ottawa, Almont I think, or Carleton Place. So we were looking into it, and there's a student. It was a 12-year-old girl in her class. Somehow found a letter in his file in Ottawa. No one had read, just a letter in his file. And it was from Captain Roy Brown to his father on the very day that this happened. He was in a 6-hour debrief, and then he wrote the letter to his father.
Wow.
And in the letter, he said that the Australians, I thought this was years later, claimed that they shot him down from the ground, but I just
shot the Red Baron down.
Yeah. But I just want to let you know, Dad, that is BS. That I got him. And, they shot him when he was already on the ground.
Yeah.
But I got him. And right there, I knew the guy's not going to lie in that era. He's not going to lie to his dad about what happened. In his mind, he had got him.
Yeah.
And that was something that sat for like 80, 100 years or whatever. I think 100 years. And the 12-year-old kid in grade 8 found that. Reported it in her book report, and I heard about it. I was reading the book report going, this is news. And I brought it out. And so
it's like watching The Longest Day, the 1962 World War II film, and I think we got like one mention in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And you go, well, wait a minute, World War I and World War II, we were there a couple of years before you guys. And nobody ever talks about
the valor and all of
Nobody's done a great movie on Vimy Ridge, but the British just did 1917. How come we can't do a movie like that about Vimy Ridge?
Got a good story for you in Holland. These guys went over
there. By the way, we did Dieppe where we lost.
Yeah.
That's Canada. Well, let's do a movie about something we lost. Yeah. Let's not do a movie about something we won that nobody else could do. Let's just do one about something we lost.
It's so true. over at one of the liberation events, these old guys went over there, and they hadn't been there in 50, 60 years, and they were in their 80s. They were sitting in a pub in the little town that they helped liberate in Netherlands, in Holland. And so they were talking about it, and they were talking about their tank. These guys, there was a whole bunch of them, but they were talking about these guys had a tank, and it had, I don't know how it come apart, and they weren't able to get it out of the mud, and I guess I don't know what the track or whatever came off, and it was stuck there. And the mayor of the town was sitting at the table. He didn't say anything. He was really cool about it. He goes, "Oh, that's an interesting story." And then when the night ended, he went to those 2 or 3 guys that were talking about that, and he said, "I want to hear more about that tank and that. Can we have breakfast tomorrow?" And you just tell me. I want to take some notes and put it in our local. So the guy says, "Sure." So he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to pick you guys up at your hotel, and we'll go to a good place for breakfast." So he picks them up at the hotel, drives them, and they're not going for breakfast. They're going out into the middle of a field.
Right.
And sure enough, the tank is still there, exactly where they left it.
Yeah.
And they never knew. They knew it was, they couldn't move it. No, nobody could move it. They said, just leave it there, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't in the town. It was out in the country somewhere. Then he took them for breakfast after. But I mean, the valor and the courage of our Canadians that have fought in all these wars. And, I was even in Afghanistan. I was so proud, just so bloody proud of being Canadian and seeing our troops there. And I think of every time I go on the Highway of Heroes, it brings a tear to my eye because I was out there.
I'll tell you something funny about it too. I went to Africa about 15 years ago and for foster parents plan, and I got to meet my foster child. I always tell people I went there to audit them, but it's not the truth. Anyway, on the way back, we stopped in Amsterdam, and I was there for a day and a half. And I was walking into restaurants. I had my Canadian flag baseball cap. I walked into 2 restaurants. One was for breakfast, one was for lunch. And the guys who owned it were under 30, and they wouldn't send me a bill. Like, that's how much these people remember, But it's a different experience when you're occupied. And I think you pass it down from generation to generation to generation than when you live in North America and nobody even came close to getting, to invading here. But I was shocked. I was shocked that these people were under 30 years old and they were still carrying the memory of what Canada did for Holland. Man, it blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, just as you're telling that story, it makes my heart smile because, and to think that was, that was basically our grandfathers and our great grandfathers that did that. Yeah, and you're right; they wouldn't do it today. I mean, you couldn't get the youth to get off the video games and to, like you said, they wouldn't pass the physical.
I think one of the other things too was depression versus signing up for World War II. A lot of guys went, you know what? I'll sign up for World War II.
But even World War I, a lot of guys left the farms and stuff. They saw it as an adventure.
They thought it was going to be like 6 months and they'd be home too, right? That's the other thing. You never get the timeline right when you go to war. Oh, this is going to take about 8-10 months. I'll be back.
I had my
like when you view it as camping with a gun, you're making a big mistake.
And they were also, you did what the man told you in those days. I mean, you don't think for yourself and go. I mean, they tell you to do something. My uncle, his name was Cliff Tevens, my mom's side. He died on right at the end of the war, the day before the day of the war ended. He was standing in a fence line. He was 6'6". And he got hit with a stray bullet and died right there. One of the last people to be killed in the war. And he's buried in Grosbeak. And when I was a kid, I went to Grosbeak with my mom and dad and my sister and I. We were standing over his grave and we were smiling for the picture. You know how when you're a kid, your dad's always telling you to smile? And my mom was saying, don't smile, which was opposite of what you're always saying. So we were all confused. So then everybody broke into laughter about that. And my mom, we looked down at her legs and the rose bushes had cut her legs and she was bleeding from her leg.
Right.
And it was the most eerie thing. Like, don't laugh over these graves. And to think that Don Cherry, our good friend Don Cherry, he was also a guest on your show. And I was there for that as well. You're right. I was there way more than 5 or 6 times. I was there. And, to think that this country took that guy out and destroyed him, not that he cares, but they tried to anyway. And then that that whole show was all about the poppies and about the graves. That's what he showed that night.
Listen, 85-year-old guys have a tendency to misspeak. And
just a bunch of thoughts that came out wrong, just like on this podcast.
Yeah, my Don Cherry thing is the same thing as I feel about Regis Philbin, which is, oh man, come on. You know what I mean? You're 80, 85, you got millions of dollars. Go and enjoy your life. And that's before any of this happened. I'm just saying, let somebody younger come in, or somebody who needs the job more come in and take the job. I'm not entirely sure that Ron MacLean, his partner, heard everything that was going on, but Ron MacLean could have put an end to the whole thing right there by saying, Don, when you say you people, you mean everybody, right? That's what he could have done.
That's his job to do that.
And somebody argued it with me, and I went, you know what? You're making like a 6-figure salary to basically soften everything an 85-year-old man says. You better do it. You better do it.
I don't like gotcha TV shows and all that stuff at all. I just don't, and especially when the guy's running shotgun with you. Look, I know for a fact that Ron MacLean 3 different times was on the ropes himself, big time.
Yeah.
And Don, I know because I'm close to Don. He would call me and go, "We're going to get him back. We're going to, what do you think? How are we going to do it?" And we did every time. I called Ron, and this is a bit of an exclusive. I called Ron in the middle of all that, and I wanted to do a front page story. And all I said, all you got to say to me, Ron, is I want Don back Saturday. I want him back.
Right.
I said, I think we get that on the front page. I don't decide on what's on the front page. Adrian Batcher, Mark Toohey do. I can go to them with that. Hey, I got Ron MacLean saying I want Don back. And he wouldn't do it. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? Are you kidding me? Like, let him finish out the year. You want him to go out as a racist?
Joe, it's
a nasty business. Do you remember?
TV and radio are so corporate now, even as opposed to 20 years ago, that if I was doing a talk show today, they wouldn't let me have somebody on from an opposing network. That's how different things are now.
And that's crazy.
It's war between these companies.
Do you remember what you said to Don on the show when he was on your show? Do you remember the question? You were the only one to ask the question.
If he was a bigot? I asked him that.
No, yeah, you asked him, are you racist? Or are you a bigot? And was he flustered? Do you remember what he said?
I can't remember what he said.
I remember because
I think he said,
I wrote it.
You know what I think he said? I think he might have said, "Fuck off, you Mick."
That got blurped out. No, what he said, Mike, was, and he laughed, he chuckled, and he said, "No, I'm not racist. I'm not a bigot. I just like to discriminate." Yeah. And that was his answer. Yeah. And he was joking.
I said to somebody, when he said he didn't mean it that way, I said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing about him. The guy doesn't lie."
Yeah, he didn't mean it that way because I talked to him. He was doing that on my column. Yeah. I called him the day before. We counted poppies, myself and photographer Veronica Henry, and we went out there. And I can't remember the number. It was like 9 or 10 per 100, and we were generous about it. We were trying to find them, like I could have torqued that and said 1 out of 100 if I wanted to do it, but I wanted, we kind of did 4 or 5 different places, and we got it to 9 or 10. And he was upset about it, and he said everything to me that he said on the air, but he wasn't under the pressure of being on the air. And unfortunately, he stumbled over it, and you're right. I think it comes down to those guys. They should have stuck up for him. I talked to him the next day. We could have put that fire out quickly. I said to him, because I said there was a fire. He didn't realize there was a fire. And he's like, his attitude was, I don't care. I mean, I didn't say anything wrong.
Oh, you got to know this guy's not cruising the internet.
And well, exactly. And I told him, no, I think we should, do something. And then he said, no, you do something. He said, I stand behind all of it. And so I wrote that because I don't want to, stage manage Don Cherry, whatever he wants to do. But I do care about him, and I care about him the same way I care about Mike. And where I don't like to see people taken down for frivolous reasons. I mean, if you really, really do something wrong, that's different. But when people are out to get you, to take you down for something you may have said wrong in a show or whatever, that it's kind of not really clear. Now they were out to get him for a long time. The other thing really bothers me, Mike, about...
Oh, the funny part to me was when somebody called him irrelevant the day he got fired, and then for the next 8 days, that's all anybody was talking about. And I went, man, you look like an a-hole. There's nothing irrelevant about this guy. Not a thing.
And I don't believe their numbers are up. Do you? I don't.
Are they saying their numbers are up?
They said that, and they were,
It's been my experience that when media companies say their numbers are up, somebody's about to get the axe.
Yeah, it's coming. Who's it going to be?
I don't know, but it'll be somebody involved with, not so much involved with their television portion, but involved directly with hockey.
You know, when
it'll be somebody going, because they paid, what'd they pay, $5 billion for the NHL rights?
Yeah.
That's insane.
And what I'm worried about is that it's going to end up back on Hockey Day in Canada, and the taxpayers will end up, forking over $2 billion of it to kind of allow Sportsnet to drift off on it, because they owe a lot of money in that deal. But you think about Strombo, he got that job. And the reason he didn't keep that job was because Don wouldn't do Coach's Corner with him. He wanted to be loyal to Ron.
Right.
Had they let George Strombolopoulos do the Don Cherry segment, it would have been kind of fun and different, and it would have given George something like
I don't think so. I think Don would have gotten aggravated every single Saturday night.
Maybe it would have happened sooner. Maybe Don would have retired earlier.
Possible. But I'll tell you something, Joe.
Why didn't they just go to Don and say, we know you're not racist, we know you're not a bigot, we're going to sort that out, but you gotta go. You gotta retire at the end of the year, and just announce it, and then let him finish out the year, and it would be great ratings. It's just like Letterman. I mean, what Letterman did was way worse. I mean, way worse. His whole scandal. You talk about Me Too. It was way worse. But that was some of the best television in his last few months that I've ever seen. I mean, it was really that good,
Yep. I think it's all company now, all the time, and nobody falls on their sword for anybody. That's one thing that's gone now, loyalty. It's gone. It's gone the way of the dinosaur. It's done.
When you're doing
stuff like this now, you're doing it because you don't have to deal.
Well, that's what Don sat around with his son Tim, his daughter Cindy, and his grandson Dal. And they sit around the kitchen table, and he put a picture of the order Mandarin, the multicultural right there. And they did the podcast.
so using Joe's argument, if you like their food, you can't be a racist.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, the delivery guy, you're not going to make fun of the way he drives. So you're just going to be happy when the food gets there. Okay.
I don't think any network can cancel us here, can they?
No.
All right.
No.
But we might be able to get an ad for Mandarin. So,
geez, I love buttered chicken, but I can't stand that guy who runs a convenience store down the street. Is that basically your thing? Right. All right. We got to talk about. Let's take a quick break. We got to talk about murders now. So now you're doing some stuff on cold cases.
Yeah.
Cold murder cases.
Yeah, the OPP did a really good job, Mike, on putting together a video series.
Yeah.
On 3 cases. There was one in Orangeville, and that was the Sonia Verishin murder, which is a 10-year-old case.
Yeah, she was a nurse.
A nurse, she was working for a pharmaceutical company.
Right.
And somebody murdered her, and they haven't solved it. There was a case of Melanie Etche up in New Liskeard, who was a 15-year-old girl that went to her friend's house for a movie. And there was a case in Kirkland Lake of a woman, I forget her name. His last name was Watson. I apologize. But they solved that one. Yeah. And that was Jim Smith, Detective Sergeant Jim Smith, the same guy that
did Colonel Russell Williams.
Yeah. And they got the guy to admit it after 49 years. But they put that video in to show people that, they can be solved. The case of Sonia Verishin, I was out there with Inspector Sean Glassford, who's a great guy, great cop, and his team, and they're really, really working that case hard because basically, and I didn't know a lot about the case, and Jack Bullard and I went out there. There's actually 3 crime scenes. There's her little townhouse, which is tucked away. You'd never find it. That's why they think that somebody with local knowledge, because I don't think you'd even be able to. It's almost like hidden in there. You drive by that street and never know it's in there.
Right.
And then the second crime scene is where she was found about 12 kilometers southeast towards Newmarket. And then the third was the killer drove out there, dumped her there about 30 feet into the bush. if the dogs didn't walk by at a particular time.
Yeah, a guy was walking his dog and found the body.
If the wind was blowing the other way or who knows what, she may still be there. But the killer drove it back into town.
Drove her car back into town.
And then disappeared.
And he parked it behind an industrial mall or something, didn't he?
Just behind the main street, behind a business. Which
is surprising to me that there's no video.
Anyway, there is video, but they're not talking about that. But they have video. Yeah. But they're not saying they have video. But you and I both know they have video. But they, for whatever reason, they're not sharing it at this time. Right. That's my speculation.
But they're trying to solve the case. They're trying to solve a 10-year-old case. You'd think they'd, divulge some stuff to try and twig somebody's memory.
Well, you can do that, or it can cause trouble too. And the more you put out, they kind of know the reason they know that they know things. And the video, if they indeed do have video that's 10 years old, they haven't put it out for a reason. And again, I'm speculating a little bit, but anyway, it is what it is, and it's a very, very horrible case because she was 42 years old. Somebody came there. The suggestions were that, maybe it was a suitor or somebody, an ex-boyfriend and that, but they've checked everybody out. And there's DNA at the scene, and all the people that were close to her, anybody that she would have known, has all been investigated, and they haven't been able to link it up with anybody. So somebody has slipped through the cracks. And if you stand there at where she lives, Mike, if it's Tiger Woods, get it like 2 drives and it would be where that car was parked. It's just that on one side of the town, there's like this big kind of ravine that runs through.
Right.
And so somebody went through that and was there in a couple of minutes. And then, rather than going all the way around kind of thing, because I saw these, there's snow out there. And I could see the footprints through. And I asked the cops. They said, "Where's that go?" And they said, "Well, that actually goes into town by the McDonald's and everything." So the kids would know where to go in there, and I think the killer know. Yeah. So the killer probably, in my opinion, the killer lives somewhere, or at that time anyway, lived somewhere around there, or knew the area very well.
Right. You know what? I've seen them. You said they caught somebody after 49 years. I wouldn't be surprised if the trail's still somewhat warm after 10.
I hope they catch whoever killed her, because whoever did it was vicious and it was dangerous. And the case up in Kirkland Lake, it was good that they caught the guy. He was like 75 years old, and I think he was ready to pack it in. And
what was the deal with him? Was it a crime of passion?
Yeah, he was a sex offender. He assaulted a little girl, and she was going to tell. She said she was going to tell. That's what he said in the confession. She ran away, and he had to chase her through. It was really hard to. It's in the video.
Man,
it's tough to. It's tough to listen to.
Anything. Murder's bad enough, but when it's kids, Jesus.
In the case of Melanie Etche up in New Liskeard, she was at her mom's house, and because her room was messy, they had a bit of a. I don't know if it was a disagreement, but they ended up moving the movie night over to her friend's place a kilometer away. And I remember this, and this, as a father now, I never forgot it. I learned it in the Mahaffey case in the Bernardo business.
Yeah.
Is that, the girl got home, they were frustrated. You fight with your 14-year-old daughter, locked her out, and of course the rest is history.
You know what?
Never do that.
That happened with the Mahaffey case too, and I'll tell you, never lock your kid out, ever. I mean, I come from a different time, but my parents never locked you out of the house, no matter how mad they were at you.
No.
You just can't do it. Now, the biggest case, I'd say, biggest murder case in Canadian history since Ambrose Small, that theater owner back in the early 1900s, is probably the Honey and Barry Sherman case. Barry Sherman, the owner of Apotec Pharmaceuticals, he and his wife were found dead in their house in a grisly manner. You were there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was there the night of it happening, and in fact, we had a story on the Toronto Sun. The page was made up already, and they were executed. It looked like that. That's what our sources who saw the bodies said that. And I made a phone call into the Toronto police just because I didn't want to be wrong on that. And the police at the time were adamant that was wrong and that it was actually a murder-suicide.
Right. They really shouldn't have said that.
No, and I think that they felt maybe they weren't really ready. Maybe they should have said that we're not ready yet. The coroner has it. I don't know. But they were adamant about it, and so I reported that.
Man, no statement would have been better than that one.
And if you look back at the video, they came right out. They say they didn't come out and say that, but they did. They came out and said that there's nothing to worry about here. This is basically they signaled it, and either that was right, and they changed it because of political pressure, or they got it so wrong that it's just so.
Especially in a case like that's that high profile. I mean, this guy gave tons of money to political parties. He was a fundraiser, and for them to make any statement at all at that time, if they weren't sure, was stupid.
Well, you've been around him. You've seen him in person. I've seen him. And there's just no way he could have done all what they.
No way.
Yeah, they should have known. I even argued that night with the police that, are you sure? Like, is this, because it doesn't add up to me. He was not a very strong, robust kind of guy. I don't think that he would have been able to take out his wife like that easily.
He was a pretty diminutive guy.
So there was a murder, and I think they're going to solve this murder. I think that it's
been over 2 years.
Yeah, they're not sharing a lot, but we're hearing a lot of rumblings and different things they're doing.
Can you say what? What kind of rumblings?
Well, like obviously my esteemed, I don't know if he would consider me a peer, but I kind of consider him a peer. Kevin Donovan over the Star is kind of the go-to guy in the case. I come into it here or there. He thinks that they're close to it. I don't, I think it is too, and I think that I got to be careful how I word this because I don't want to be wrong and make it even worse. But I think that they have a conspiracy case, Mike, for sure. They figured out some of that, and I think that's where you'll see it go first, and then whether it ever leads to somebody being charged with murder or tried for murder. But I think they're pretty good at figuring out that who wanted Barry and Honey Sherman dead and why.
Yeah.
And notice I said Barry and Honey Sherman, not just Barry Sherman.
Right.
That's important.
Really? So that's something I should wait to find out about. The fact that you mentioned both names.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that everyone thinks it's just about Barry Sherman, and I said Barry and Honey Sherman. I think that
so you're leaving a big hint on the table.
I just think that they're both the targeted. It wasn't one accident.
It wasn't just her happening to be home when it was done. No. It was professional, right? I mean, come on. They knew when to get in the house. There's no video of them in the house.
It was the same.
These guys knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess so.
Whether somebody hired them or not, I don't know. But God, I heard all kinds of things the first year, like that it was a pharmaceutical deal gone bad in Israel, that Mossad flew guys in. And
don't rule anything out.
Really?
Don't rule anything in or out because it's something. It's something. There's 4 or 5 things it could be, and some of them are like, if it was Hollywood, you'd make them particular way,
It's got all the earmarks of stuff like Black Dahlia around it. It's a movie waiting to be made, this thing, once they solve it. It's going to happen for sure, whether they change the names and do it in Hollywood or what, but somebody's going to make a film about it. It's
an interesting thing because they're wonderful people. I mean, they were people, and they weren't perfect or any of that, but like they did so much for...
They did a lot for a lot of people.
A lot. And, and they did a lot for Jewish charities, but they did a lot outside of that as well.
Yep.
And, Sick Kids Hospital and different things about it. And the thing that I always felt, and I didn't know them really, because I did Night Scrawler, I would see them at things, obviously. And they had a kind of a keen sense of what the media was for. You know what I mean? They knew how to.
They were savvy, both.
Yeah, they were savvy. That was a good way of putting it. And that's why whoever did this was paying them back for that savvy. I mean, he never lost the deal, that guy.
Yeah.
Barry Sherman.
Yeah.
I mean, and if he did, you had to have a lot of lawyers because he did.
So are you saying more personal than business related?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
So you think it's more personal?
Yes.
Boy, I'm going to have you back when that comes out.
Well, I'd love to come back. I hope that it's sorted out. I think of them all the time. I really do. And you're right. I mean, it's a big case. I mean, I think that I kind of got messed up on it that first night by not, I didn't have the story wrong, but it wasn't right either.
Yeah.
And, and so I was talking, to I can't think of his name, but the detective that's on CP24, Steve. And anyway, right before when they announced it, he said that he didn't think they were going to stick with the thing. And when Sue Gomes announced that it was a murder-suicide, you could hear a pin drop in there. Like it was quite stunning.
Oh, his family was incensed when they heard it.
Yeah. Well, they were incensed. That's one of the hardest things that I ever did in my whole life, my whole career, was going to their funeral. And was the guy who was like the skunk. Like if a funeral can have a pall over it, it was because of that story that I did.
Yeah.
Funerals are already brutal, but this one was worse.
But they admitted pretty quickly that wasn't the case, right?
Not quickly, 42 days.
Yeah.
Steve Ryan, by the way, is the detective who's on CP24, and he's a homicide detective, and he's just a terrific guy. And, he and I, we were talking right before, and boy, that was like a bombshell when that news came out.
Yeah. Now, you wanted to talk about that Netflix show, Don't Fuck with Cats.
Have you watched it?
I just love the way it's Netflix and they put 2 asterisks instead of a U and a C.
Yeah.
I fucked with cats my entire life, and I wouldn't go out of my way to hurt a cat, but I wouldn't go out of my way to help one. You know what I mean? I'm not crazy about cats. I remember a dog saving his owners from a fire, and actually came in from the backyard, dove through the screen door, woke up his owners, and got them out of the house. They never tell you the other part, which is a cat was seen at the foot of the driveway with a book of matches. They never tell you the rest of the story. But as soon as I see anything with cats in it, Joe, I don't watch. I've never seen Lion King. So that's a big cat, but I've never seen it. And when I saw Don't Fuck with Cats, if it said Do Fuck with Cats, I would have watched it. I don't even know what it's about. Tell me.
Luca Magnotta,
one of our psycho killers in Canada.
And it started with him allegedly torturing and killing cats, putting them in a bag, and he filmed all this stuff allegedly.
So what are they saying? Like that's usually the progression for a guy to become a serial killer, right?
Yeah, this was an internet killer because he used the social media. He changed his name. Even Luca Magnotta is not his name. His name is Eric Clinton Newman.
Yeah.
Luca Magnotta is a combination of a couple people. Vince Magnotta from one of the video games, and he loved all the movies. And Netflix did this documentary. There was a couple of documentaries I did interviews because I had interviewed Luca Magnotta 3 years before, and this will I can tell that story quickly on how that came about. I was listening to John Downs on 640, where we both have done shows, and this guy phoned into the show frantic about his life. I don't know why. I happened to tune in about halfway through the call, and he was talking about how Carla Homolka, people were saying that he was dating Carla Homolka. Carla Homolka at that time was kind of still...
Luca Magnotta, the killer, was dating Carla Homolka, the accessory to murder?
Right, and he was saying these kinds of things that he's not dating her. People are saying that he's dating her. It's ruining his life. And he sounded so frantic, and then I'm like, what the hell is this, right? And I'm listening to this, I'm driving, and he finally says, something about Luca. My name is Luca Magnotta, and I guarantee so I wrote that down, Luca Magnotta, and I Googled it when I got home. And all this stuff came up, and he was like a model, and he had all this stuff. He created this whole image.
He was nuts.
So I left him an email, I guess, or something like that. He called me back, and he said, I said, like, what's going on with this Carla Homolka stuff, ruining your life or whatever? He started telling me. I said, well, do you want to maybe do a story on that or whatever? Call him, and he said, yeah, can you meet me at this place? He told me where to meet him, and I'm like, I don't think so, So come on over to the Sun Building. In those days, we were on King Street, where we were for all those years. And Veronica Henry and I interviewed him, and she videoed it, and she took some still pictures of him. And he was like, she said he was really a good, like he knew how to do the posing and the modeling. He knew how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for him because he looked like he was on like amphetamines or something. Yeah. Or maybe he wasn't taking his Prozac or something weird. So I was thinking, like, what is it? And because I came out of the Night Scrawler culture, I don't know if I was still doing Night Scrawler or not, but I still wrote about kind of characters like that. So a lot of people say, why would you write that column? Well, because I wrote columns on people like that all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but I remember putting a line in there about how, I felt that if anyone knew him and whatever, this is a good time to help him. And I really meant that. And I never thought, the thing that in retrospect, I go back on is I realized that he came in and his hair was all dyed blonde. He was trying to be Paul Bernardo at the time. And the second thing is, by writing that column, I gave him exactly what he was craving, which was attention. He wanted, So I never thought of him again. I mean, once in a while I would think of him, but I never looked him up or Googled. I'm not a Googler. And then my wife was pregnant, and I remember she was having a really rough day. That happens, and it was late into the term and that, and so I was sort of tending to that, and we kind of fell asleep because she was, she was in a lot of pain and stuff like that. Then bang, I had the BlackBerry. It was like, how I used to do the red light and that.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and all these messages, Luca Magnotta. I remembered right away. It was like 3 years before that. And then it turns out he had killed June Lin and taken off, and he was over in France or wherever he was in Germany. And so it was one of these things where, the internet chase continued, and he was emailing me from over there, and I was writing about it. It turns out that long before this, he was killing the cats in the 3 years since I had written about him. And these people in the United States, and I wrote some of this, people were phoning in because he did a live murder on kind of a Facebook murder in real time or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
And there was a core of people in the U.S., and I know there's a lot of American listeners to your podcast, who, and maybe you can get some of them on the show sometime, they were really chasing who this guy was, trying to figure out. And then, in the video, in the podcast, one of the things that made the news, Mike, was they called one of the Texas guys that was involved in this chase, called it Etobicoke instead of Etobicoke. But he used he figured out where the Petro-Canada sign was and turned it around and figured out where the apartment was, and they went there. They could never find him. He was playing this game of cat and mouse. And I didn't know any of that was going on. Fascinating story. Horrible for June Lin. He was a nice kid from China who got
murdered by him.
And I went to his grave, and I was standing there at June Lin's grave, and I thought to myself, I wondered if, and it's just, I don't want to kick myself around too much, but if I'd never written that column, would that guy be in that grave? I don't know. It's hard to know, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it did cross my mind, though, that we all fed into it. Now, I didn't do that on purpose. I was trying to get him some help. Yeah. Now, here's one more thing on it.
Think about it this way, Joe. You didn't get Don Cherry's job back.
Not yet, but we're still working on that. I got Ron MacLean's job back.
Yeah.
He forgets that.
Yeah.
And but this is a good documentary if you want to watch it.
Don't fuck with cats.
Yeah. But when he went to trial in Montreal, I went down to the trial, and by that time I had my son, and we were at the hotel, and every day I was waiting to be called, and got down to the Thursday, so I was there from Sunday to Thursday, every day waiting, and you're anxious and stuff. I don't do a lot of testifying in court, so they called me over. I go over there, I'm wearing my suit and all that kind of stuff, and they wanted to talk to me. His lawyer, Luc Leclerc, and then I think the Quebec Corps lawyer was there, and somebody else. There was a table like this. And I was taking the approach that this guy's mentally ill, in my opinion. That was my opinion.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to like that. And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you that I thought he was mentally, I didn't think he was normal. And I was trying to get him some help. And you're talking about him as like some sort of a monster, and yeah, he's dangerous, and obviously he's, but I think that he's mentally ill. And I think that should be considered in this. And somebody said to me in this conference room, I was supposed to go testify, said, "You talk too much." That's what they said to me. And they said, "We're not going to call you." So I wasted a whole week in Montreal, which was actually okay, but we went to smoke meat sandwiches and stuff, but it still pissed me off.
It's amazing how you turned a serial cat killer into a inconvenience for you.
Yeah. But I just felt that, the court should have heard what I had to say, which is that this guy was mentally ill. And
I think they leave that to Joe. Experts, maybe?
Yeah, I guess that's the way it is. Anyway, so he's in jail, and he's married now, and whatever. I mean, but watch the documentary if you're listening, and I've got a small little role in it, but
Don't Fuck with Cats with Joe Warmington.
It's a big, it's a very successful documentary on
right.
Netflix.
Don't Fuck with Cats, starring Joe Warmington.
I'm not saying it.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
It's good to be here. It's very, very warm in here.
It is.
You're listening to U2 with Mike Bullard on the Possibly Correct Network. The king of spontaneity, former host of Open Mic with Mike Bullard, legendary comedian Mike Bullard is back. Stay up to date with the latest from Mike and the podcast by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Minds.com and Gab, or navigate to www.u2mikebullard.com. While you're online, please show your support for the show by leaving a review on your favourite media player. You can check out all of our podcasts by following Possibly Correct on Minds.com.